911, what's the location of the emergency?
Sandy Hook School. I think there's somebody shooting in here. Sandy Hook School.
Okay, what makes you think that?
Because somebody's got a gun. I saw a glimpse of somebody. They're running down the hallway.
Okay.
They're still running. They're still shooting. Sandy Hook School, please.
It's scenes like these that urge Americans to strive for more strict and regulated gun control laws for the safety of its citizens. This topic has become more controversial in recent years, with national news covering shootings such as the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre, Virginia Tech shooting, and the University of Texas shooting. This change has been pushed by the people over time, eventually reaching our court systems and therefore forcing politicians to seek a change that will better our society's safety nationwide.
The history of gun control and the struggle to change it starts with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment grants citizens the right to bear arms, but the literal meaning of the amendment has been questioned since it was written in 1791, as the needs for guns have changed since.
In 1871, the NRA was formed by two Union soldiers promoting civilian marksmanship in order to protect our Second Amendment rights. This organization has become one of the largest politician-funding lobbyist groups for the past 150 years due to the size and influence it holds. They promote gun safety and more lenient gun control laws and regulations.
In 1934, the National Firearm Act was the first major limitations that were set on gun rights due to the increasing amounts of gang-related deaths and crimes. The act put taxes on short-barrel shotguns, rifles, and automatic weapons.
The Firearm Act of 1938 was passed so that nobody could sell firearms without a license. They are also required to document who bought the weapon and hold records on that person. Those convicted of violent felonies were found unfit for guns, however, and it was made illegal to sell to them.
In addition to the Federal Firearm Act, the Gun Control Act of 1968 was put in place so that those who were seen as unfit to own guns could no longer own them. Mentally unstable, convicted felons, and drug users couldn't purchase any firearms after this act was passed. It also forced dealers to enforce stricter records and background checks on potential buyers.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was created in 1972, listing part of its mission the control of illegal use and sale of firearms and the enforcement of federal firearms laws. ATF issues firearms licenses and conducts firearms licensee qualification and compliance inspections.
Gun violence has become more of a controversial topic due to the amount of mass media that cover the different cases regarding gun violence. Some believe that the only way to stop the abuse of firearms is to restrict the problem, while others believe it is necessary to protect themselves with equal or more powerful weapons, such as NRA Vice President Wayne LaPierre, who said, "The only person who can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun." The next two videos will show the two sides of this debate.
Do you see public opinion rising and enough of a move among the public to help create a different climate for your bill this time, Congresswoman?
Well, you know, Raf, I've been talking to a lot of people, and the intensity of feeling seems to have increased. You know, you're never going to 100% be able to stop a deranged person from getting their hands on a gun. But what you can do is stop them from getting their hands on one of these assault magazines that shoots 30 rounds, as the case in Connecticut, 100 rounds, as the case in Aurora. That gives the victim some fighting chance to run away, or like happened with Congressman Giffords, when his clip ran out, somebody tackled him and stopped him from shooting even more people. So it just seems to be common sense. And the only purpose of these magazines is to either shoot targets or to shoot people. And so it really kind of seems like a no-brainer to a lot of us. Congresswoman McCarthy and I have been talking to a number of NRA Democrats as well as our colleagues across the aisle, and we're finding no one's signed on yet, but we're finding a new willingness of those folks to work with us and to talk to us.
What about the NRA? Will Republicans be reluctant to fight against the wishes of the NRA, or has the NRA's influence waned?
No, the NRA is still, I think, the most powerful lobbying group in Washington. And so what has to happen now is the moms and dads of America have to contact their representatives and senators, and they have to say, where do you stand? What are you going to do about the bigger picture? And what are you going to do in specific to keep these assault magazines out of the hands of crazy people and criminals?
Your projection at this point is you think it's more hopeful than it was when you first introduced the bill. Is that your prediction or your count at this time?
I absolutely think that it's more hopeful. The president coming out and saying we need to do something about this. Public opinion for banning these magazines now over 60%. Even gun owners say, why do I need a magazine that's going to shoot 30 or 100 rounds at one time? So I do think it's moving, but I think it's going to be very difficult because the NRA is very powerful.
Congresswoman Diana DeGette, thank you for your time.
Good to be with you, Ref.
15 years old, and I've been shooting for almost 8 years. I've also been a part of the Maryland Rifle Club and Maryland State Rifle Team since I was 11. We shoot semi-automatic AR-15s, and my personal rifle is a Bushmaster. Because of this, I have become eligible for various shooting scholarships around the country to a wide array of even the most prestigious colleges that have shooting teams. Achieving stricter gun control laws would obliterate any opportunity I could have had to attend a decent college on a shooting scholarship. Ever since I first learned how to shoot, the issue with gun violence around the nation became clear. Guns are not the problem, people are. Purging our society of violence and murder cannot be done through gun control legislation. By signing this legislation, you are not signing away gun violence, but instead liberating American citizens of our constitutional rights. You are not eliminating guns from society, but eliminating our ability to protect our lives, liberty, and pursuits of happiness. Chicago, Illinois has had some of the strictest gun control laws in America enacted for the past few years, and it is currently more than twice as likely for you to be killed in Chicago as in the Afghani War. For the past 11 years and 4 months in the Afghani War, 2,166 people have been killed. Now in only 8 years in Chicago, 4,265 people have been killed, and 3,371 of them were from being shot. Is that really something we want to model our state laws after? Now, even of those 3,371, only 37 were killed with a rifle, which is barely 1%. 98% were killed with a handgun, so creating gun control legislation that targets assault rifles has statistically proven to only weed out less than 1% of the problem if you're lucky. I'd also like to point out that none of the guns used in the Chicago shootings were registered or licensed to the people who use them, thus even further proving that simply restricting guns will not stop criminals from using them. Nor will restricting guns stop criminals from harming others in general. On December 14th of 2012, the same day as the Sandy Hook shooting in central China, a man stabbed 22 children and 1 adult. Guns are not needed for mass murder, and robbing American citizens of our rights to own them won't solve anything. You must also consider the fact that the majority of gun violence occurs in low-income neighborhoods. Raising the overall cost of owning a gun through higher licensing and registration fees denies the ability of low-income individuals to protect themselves against the crime focused in the areas they live in. Passing this legislation would be discriminating against these lower-income individuals who are actually at a higher risk of being victimized in crimes. To abolish or severely limit the right of the Maryland residents as a whole to bear arms, which is the intent of the proposed legislation, is to essentially defeat the purpose of our own U.S. Constitution. The entire foundation of the United States was formed on the principle that the government, our government, is a government of the people, for the people, by the people, and taking away the people's right to bear arms is taking away the people's power in the government. The Second Amendment, which grants to citizens the right to secure their natural rights, is the backbone of our democratic society. I hope you all consider these points as you go to vote on this or any other gun control bills.